All right, today I want to show you how you can leverage ChatGPT to write software, help you write tests for software. This is going to be something that's going to be very big in the future. You have to leverage the power behind artificial intelligence. And just also as a disclaimer, I do not want to have you believe that this is the way to write software, but it will help in doing some trivial tasks, maybe helping you come up with some different test cases for your code. And you should always, however, you should always conduct reviews with your colleagues, with your architects, and with test engineers to make sure that you are following all the proper guidelines that your organization has. So let's just jump into a real quick example. We can just type down here into the chat GPT chat line. We can type, for instance, write C# code that will list what do we want to say? Write C# code that will list up to 500 prime numbers. So now the AI is going to spit out for us code that will do this. It takes you step by step through it. So even if you'd never even have programmed anything in your life, you can use the chatbot here to create code for you. So I don't know if this runs. I have no idea if this is actually going to be code that you can use. But what it also does is here you can see how it's showing you what the code does. It explains to you in plain text what it's doing. And then we can just kind of scroll up and we can kind of look and see, okay, this is how it determined to call the namespace, and then this made the class declaration, and so on and so forth. So looks to be rather trivial. Again, it was a rather trivial assignment for the chat GPT. And so now what we can do is we can take it a step further. We can actually say, okay, thanks. Now using NUnit, because NUnit is a common test framework for .NET, for C#. Thanks. Now using NUnit, write test cases to test the code. And so now ChatGPT is going to spit out for me a test class, and we can see what it's showing me. Actually, this is not even really doing what I intended. Actually, what it does is it is giving me a prime number, or telling me if a certain number is prime or not. But this is nonetheless interesting what it's spitting out here. So it's going through, has 3 test cases so far, now 4 test cases. So, and now it's telling me too, the test cases cover a range of different input values, including prime numbers, composite numbers, negative numbers, and special cases like 0 to 1. You can add more test cases needed to thoroughly test the isPrime function. Now, I myself just realized that this is not exactly what I wanted it to do. I wanted it to give me up to 500 prime numbers. Here, however, it just checks if a number is prime. So let's fine-tune this a little bit. Let me refine my requirement and say, okay, thanks again, but now I just want code that will output the first 500 prime numbers starting, well, let's just say starting with 5. So now, oh, it even says it's a modified version of the C# program that will output the first 500 prime numbers starting with 5. Okay, so it's giving me a count, it's giving me the number while the count is less than 500. If is prime number, right line number count plus plus. Okay, so it increments the count, it increments the number, so it's going to go through a loop there to first check it, and it writes this is prime function, which will determine if a number is prime or not. If it is prime, then it will, as we can see here on the top here, if it is prime, it will write out that number. So this is doing a little bit more of what I wanted to do. So I had to be a little bit more specific in my requirements for the ChatGPT to figure out what I want. And now I'll just go back and basically do the same thing, but ask it to write for me some test cases. So let's say now write test cases using NUnit to verify the program. Okay, so here's some test cases used to verify the modified version of the program using NUnit. So the same thing, and as you can see, it does it rather quickly. What I think is actually kind of cool is that you can actually see looks like it's typing something, so it's going like basically character for character, but it's actually just writing out chunks. I think certainly the UI or the AI is probably has already a snapshot of what it has in mind to do, and it just basically types it out so that you can read it kind of in real time. Otherwise you'd have like a big block of information just being spit out. So let's see here. This test case uses a string writer. Okay, so it uses a string writer to capture the output of the program and then compares it to the expected output, which is a string containing the first 500 numbers starting with 5. Okay, so this is only one test case. Yeah, because because my specification said I want them to print out the first 500 primes starting with 5. So here is just, of course, it knows what those first 500 prime numbers are and writes out the expected output. Let me check this if this is correct. Wait, so as a string writer, the expected output. Now here it says it's basically a blank string or an empty string. So now here's the for loop. If the program is the prime number starting with that number, then the expected output, but I don't see where. Okay. So basically, as the program, right, the program here will basically run the entire program. So it will write to this string writer the results of the call to the program, and here it's building the expected output. And once it builds the expected output, then it compares the expected output, which it built here, to the string that was made with a string writer. So this is a really interesting way to use ChatGPT. You can use it for for writing scripts. Even you could probably use some kind of if you have a particular API that you're using for test cases, you can probably use this as well for writing scripts to facilitate the execution of tests. This is just scratching the surface. So if you like this type of content, please hit like, hit subscribe, and we'll try to get more content like this out to you in the next coming days. Thanks a lot.